All right, we're on Shlach, Likuti Sichot Beit, Dalet, and we are on paragraph Beit. And we're asking the question, how is it that all the Jews were afraid to go into the land of Israel after God did all these amazing miracles for them to take them out of Egypt and to care for them and protect them in the desert? How could it be that the Meraglim that went in scared them? How could it be? Ein L'Teret Zod, we can't ask the question, we cannot answer this question and say like this. Shenitzachon shel paro einu mahava hochacha shekach yikra ezel eit lamed aleph malachi kanan. Maybe you can say like this. Good, why didn't Kalev argue with the people and say, listen, don't you remember the miracles that God did? What about the food that He's giving us? Why did Kalev just say, let's go up and conquer the land? Why didn't he bring any proofs? He says, okay, maybe you can think, and this is a bad answer, maybe you can think that, the Kalev didn't bring it up because the Egypt was weaker than the kings that were living in the land of Canaan. The kings that were living in the land of Canaan, there were 31 kings. Each one had his own nation. And Egypt, there was one big nation. And maybe Egypt was weaker. So that you could defeat a weaker opponent is no sign that you're going to beat a stronger opponent. And the people in Israel were stronger opponents, the Canaanites that lived there. Says the Rebbe, that's a bad answer. Why? Shahari, Beshira Tayam, in the song that the Jews sang after they went over the sea, She Radu Kol Bnei Israel, Shoru Kol Bnei Israel, that all the Jewish people sang. It says, Namogul Kol Yeshva Kanan. It says that when God split the Yam Suf, that all of the people in Canaan, all the nations of Canaan, they all melted. They were all so afraid they couldn't move. Shenitzachon b'nei Israel b'milchemes Mitzrayim, that the defeat, the victory of the Jewish people against the Egyptians, especially when the sea split, hiyapil pachad atzum al kol yeshvei Canaan. All the people in Canaan were afraid, and the Jews knew it, and the Jews said it. They're all saying it together. Ad kedei kach, so much. Sha'arbayim shana, 40 years after this, kishegiu meraglim, when the Meraglim came, Sheshalach Yoshua, that Yoshua sent, the Yerecho, when Yerecho came, what happened? The Jews, the spies that Moshe sent, that was right in the beginning of their 40 years that they were in the desert, right after they received the Torah. They wandered around in the desert for 40 years, the Jews, for 38 more years, and then Yehoshua came with the Jewish people to the border of Israel, and he did the same thing. He also sent Meraglim. That's the Haftarah of this week. He also sent spies. He says, when he sent the spies, he says, they went into Israel, Shamu shepachad ze hovish Hashem et Yam Suf, that all of the non-Jews, the Canaanites, they heard the Jews were coming, and they were afraid because God dried up Yam Suf. Now this is 40 years later. And the people that were alive at that time, that were cognizant or something like that, they must be like 50 years old now at this time. And there was 40 years, nobody forgot. And the parents passed it down to their children, that the God of the Jews dried up the Yam Suf for the Jews. The whole entire river dried the whole thing up for the Jews. Everybody's afraid. They were all afraid. Nisi kriyat Yam Suf, Hamayim, Hemis, Elabavam. This miracle of the splitting of the Red Sea, of the Yam Suf, this melted their hearts for 40 years. They were afraid of the Jews. You mentioned the word Jew, they were afraid. Kol Shechein, how much more so? B'shah sheshalach Moshe Rabbeinu, when Moshe Rabbeinu sent the Meraglim, the spies, Shahayu b'smicha zman li'tzitz Mitzrayim, which was right after the Jews got out of Egypt and created Yam Suf. If 40 years later they were afraid, so for sure, right after the miracle happened of the splitting of the sea, Chayevim al Bnei Israel liot betuchim, the Jews should have been certain in their victory on the 31 kings. If so, why were they afraid to go in the land of Israel? You can't say because they were afraid of the people. They weren't afraid of the people. They knew that the people were afraid of them. Yeterim is even more. It says in the Gemara, She'uma, She'ila Mishubedet, She'alel Mishubedet Yisrael, any nation that to it, the Jewish people, are servants, Osa Kodesh Baruch Hu Chazaka Shabumot. Wherever the Jews are held prisoner, wherever the Jews are found, that nation becomes the strongest nation in the world. The times when the Jewish people were in Egypt, Egypt ruled over the whole world. Nimsa show comes out that the Lamed Aleph Malchim, that the 31 kings were then Mishubadim. They were part of the serfs. They were in servitude to the Egyptians, like all the nations were of the world. If so, so after the Jews defeated Egypt, so therefore there was no place for them to be afraid of any of the Goyim. They could defeat Egypt. God defeated Egypt, they can defeat anyone. If so, why were they afraid to go into the land of Israel? Why? To the point where it made a whole big story out of it, and it's a whole big parsha of the Torah. What can we learn from this? This is a very negative message. Ne'emar b'Torah Chassidic, it says in the Torah Chassidic, Sibat adavar, the reason, Shalo ratzu amaraglim, that these spies did not want the Jews to go into the land of Israel, El lashir b'midbar, but to stay in the desert, was Shalo ratzu lashpil atzmam la'it asek b'gashmi. They weren't afraid of the Goyim. They weren't afraid. It was just an excuse. They didn't want to go into the land of Israel where they would have to do physical, actual labor. They wouldn't have to work. Here in the desert, we're connected to God. God is giving us our water. He's giving us our food. He's giving us our protection. To go into the land of Israel, we're going to have to dig wells. We're going to have to hunt. We're going to have to. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be competition. And also, what about protection? We're going to have to make our own army. We'll have to make our army, and we're going to have to train. And it's very dangerous. You stand opposite some guy who has a big sword, wants to cut off your head. And he's been practicing for who knows how long. And his whole dream in life is just to cut somebody into two with his sword to see how good his sword is. That's all he thinks about, right? And the Jewish people, they're not thinking about that at all. They said, listen, Moshe, you know what? Get rid of these people in the desert, in Israel. Get rid of those people, and then we'll consider it, right? Then we'll consider it. It's like going to buy a new house, and the house is filled with bobcats. You know, who's going to want to buy a house like that? Nobody's going to want to. If God himself tells you to buy a house like that, you're going to buy the house. It's not going to buy the house. He says, what are you talking about? The Jewish people, their whole existence was God. They felt God. They knew God. God took them out of Egypt. So why didn't they want it? They didn't really think that God could control the enemies. Said no. They said God can control them, but now it's going to be a different way. In the desert in Egypt, God did it all himself. We go into the land of Israel. God's going to want us to do it. We have to do the whole thing, and God's going to be our partner. That's what He wants. That's not what we want. We don't want it like that. This is not. It's not fitting to us. We're a holy nation. What do we have to go and stick people with swords for? And let God do it. He knows how to do it. I mean, He creates all these evil people. Let them just one night, in their sleep. That's it. Huh? Ne'emar, it says in Torah Chassidic that the reason, because they didn't want to, the Jews did not want to be occupied in physical things. They did it long enough in Egypt. They were sick of it. They got out of Egypt. They were now in the desert. God is taking care of them. That's the way things are supposed to be. We've suffered long enough. Now God is giving us our bread from heaven, giving us our water, protecting us. That's the way the world should be. We're not going into the land of Israel. Maybe it's a test. It's a test. God is trying to see if we really want to leave Him or not.
Psychology.
All the sorts of psychology, yes. Biyosam b'midbar, hayu b'nei Yisrael mesugarim menutakim b'olam. The Jewish people were contained and removed from the world. Gam also, Herschel. Gam achilasam v'shtiyasam. even their physical eating and drinking. Hayu nalad min ha'artzios. It was above normal. The man was bread from heaven. The water came from the well of Miriam. Even their clothes, levushim nivdalim, chitzonim legabi adam, garments which are external things to a person. They don't even go inside. One person can wear somebody else's garments. Also, they're not united with a person like food is. Food transforms itself to blood and flesh, your blood and flesh. Even their garments, which are separate things, grew together with the Jews all the time they were in the desert. Like the rabbis say, like it says, Simlatcha lod baltam yalecha. It says that your garments did not wear out. They were 40 years who wore the same garments. They were never dirty. They never ripped. People grew, little children grew with their garments. There is Israel. But God said, when you go into the land of Israel, Pasak Haman, the man is going to stop. Neltzu lechol lechem min oretz, they're now going to have to eat bread from the earth. In order to get this bread, they're going to have to deal with matters of the world. They're going to have to sharpen up the plows. They're going to have to go and buy seeds. They're going to have to plow. They're going to have to plant. And there won't be water, miracle water, from the well of Miriam anymore. It's going to stop. Okay, Urshel. Therefore, lo ratzuo meraglim, the meraglim did not want likanes le'eretz Israel, to go into the land of Israel. B'taina, because shehi ochelet yeshvea, it devours its inhabitants. What does it mean, devours inhabitants? He ochelet et yoshvea aleh. The land devours the people that dwell on it. Why? Because the people themselves become like the land. They become like land. Gashmis bilavad, only physical. The people become like dirt. What do you mean dirt? They don't see, they don't hear, they don't feel, they're not aware of God. They just are there. They exist. V'lo in ruchnim, without any spirituality. Shenitan lagi aleim be his garus min olam, his tagrus min olam. They can't, not only spiritual things you can get if you're in the desert, separate from the world, then you can think about God, then there's not all these disturbances, right? The wife doesn't come to you and says, where's the money for food? Say, well, we have man. Nobody even thought about it. There were no taxes, there were no enemies, there was no problems. Everybody got along, it was wonderful, big miracles. That's the way in the desert. That's my type of life. That, said all the Jews, is where I want to be, in the desert. Okay, mitaskim rak baruchnit, when you are in the desert and dealing only with spiritual things, the bread they ate was spiritual, the water they drank. Even their physical body was nourished by bread from heaven. That we learned, if you remember last week, that the man purified people and made them a vessel to receive the Torah. Therefore the Torah was not given to learn except for those people who ate the man. So the Jewish people were very, very religious. And they said, we don't want to leave God even 1 second. Here in the desert, God provides for us, and we thank you for your protection. Here in the desert, God gives us bread. Thank you, God, for your bread. Here in the desert, God provides us water. Thank you, God, for our water. We go into Israel, God doesn't protect us anymore. Who are we going to give thanks to? So Moshe says, no, you don't understand. In Israel, you fight against the enemy. You just arm yourself. You fight against the enemy. God takes care of it. God will take care of all the things. That's a little bit scary. That's also a little bit weird. I mean, if God takes care of it, why do we have to arm ourselves and stand there? So this is a new order. Jewish people say, okay, not very convincing. Let's go to the food. What's going to be with food in Israel? It says in food, you're going to have to work on your land. You're going to have to plow. You're going to have to plant. You're going to do this. But God will help you. God will help you. The things are going to grow up. And they said, I don't understand. Why can't we just let God do the plowing and the planting and the shearing, and everything will grow up, and we'll eat it like it is in the desert. What do we have to have? That we do all the work and God helps us. And then not only that, we probably have to give God all the credit, right? Yes, of course. Nah, it's a little bit hard. I don't think. What about food? Where are we going to get food from? You have to plow. What about water? We have to dig wells. Everybody said, listen, we'll think about it. That's it. We thought about it. No go. I don't like that. Not a nice luxury trip. Right? It's like advertising in the newspapers, luxury trip. Passover in whatever in the hotel. You do all the work. You do all the cooking. You do all the arranging. You do the washing of the dishes. You take care of your kids. And don't bother us, and you have to pay. Who's going to go? No one's going to go. I don't want to do it. What type of a thing? We'll stay in the desert, but then we got cared by everybody. We don't have to pay anything. We got a real deal, though. Real deal. You'll regret it. Right? You're going to have enemies, big enemies, and they're going to really attack you. Sounds good? Does not. But you'll win. You'll win the battles. Almost all of them. Not, The Jewish people said, listen, maybe, you know what? Maybe go to the Mexicans. They might take this offer up. Or maybe the Thailandis. They're really good, they're pretty good workers and everything like that. God said, no. I want you. And the Jewish people said, well, it's been nice, God. Thanks a lot. We really appreciate all you've done for us. All you've done for us. But I think the time has come for us to part our ways. So God said, there is no other way. Only way is my way. If you don't go my way, then you haven't got any life. I'll make another Jewish people. I was just thinking, now they say, I heard that that there's all this evidence, really evidence from the Navy of UFOs. I mean, they really have really clear evidence. I never really made no difference to me, but there's evidence. So of UFOs. I mean, the fact of the matter is, even if they do have UFOs, a UFO is nowhere near as bizarre and powerful and weird and awesome as an angel. And angels are, the Torah is filled with these angels. Angels are coming to Avram, they came to Bilam, they came to this, and there's angels, the Michael, all these angels that Yechezkel saw and all these. Anyway, they got hacked around with this thing about UFOs. So, but they have some pretty good proof. They have proof, and the Navy has proof, and they said that they've just been sort of hiding and not making a big deal out of it. UFOs. So, in fact, they once asked the Rebbe, I think I told you about this, Professor Green, Olav Shalom, that he asked the Rebbe, is it okay, he's working on a project for NASA, is it okay that they want to see if there's life on Mars, is that permissible? So the Rebbe said, of course it's permissible. What's the question? If you find that there is life on Mars, then that shows even another aspect of God, that he created these people also. And he's not just limited to creating people here. Anyway, that's what it is. Now, can you imagine, so we have to say we're religious Jews, right? So we have to say that God creates everything. It means that if there is really people, Martians, or wherever they're from, Venetians or something, and it means that God created them. And it could be that they're aware that God creates them. If they can make a rocket ship, they're certainly aware of things, So it must be that they got. Now, can you just imagine if somehow or other we got a way to communicate with these people? I mean, there must be some communication. Like I say, if they can make these rocket ships that move, 1,000 times the sound of sound or something, who knows what it is. So obviously they have some sort of intelligence. And you can, Shalom. Oh yeah, okay, good. Well, just 1 minute. And you can communicate with them. Let's say that after all the communication, that these Martians came and they said, we came here because we understand that God, our Creator, gave His Torah here. Right? If He landed in Israel, they'd say, who put you up to this? This is not. They said, no, really. There's a Creator. He creates everything. He creates us too. We're not outside of the creation. And this Creator, we heard that He gave His law to His people down here in the world. We would like to see this. Could you imagine what a turnover that would be? And it's not really impossible to believe. If there really is such a thing as these UFOs and people that are there, which it seems more and more that there's more and more proof that there is. They says that they talked to Trump about it, and Trump said, okay, it could be. It could be. I'm not negating the idea. But wherever it is, right, God created them. And if God created them with any intelligence, they must know that God created them. Somehow or other, there's a potential. So that would mean the Jews, on the other hand, the Meraglim, the spies, did not want to go into the land of Israel because they wanted to stay in the desert. And they didn't want the trouble of going into Israel. And even more, they didn't want to go into Israel and forget about God. As we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow.